Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spin It Reviews. Today I'm going to be talking about the new album from Modest Mouse called Strangers to Ourselves. Modest Mouse, of course, seminal veteran indie rock band, known by surface-level pop fans as the one-hit wonders behind Float On, and by everyone else as the masters behind classic albums like The Lonesome Crowded West, The Moon in Antarctica, and my personal favorite, Good News for People Who Love Bad News. If I had to describe them in one word, it would probably be eccentric. Even when they did channel the more accessible side on albums like the very underrated We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank, there was still a certain absurd quirk to the instrumentation, and of course, frontman Isaac Brock stole the show with his distinctly manic vocal delivery and subject matter. For those unaware, this new album, Strangers to Ourselves, is a very important one, mostly because it's their first full-length album in 8 years. No breakup, no hiatus, they just took a really long time with this, I guess. And while overall I don't really hear more than half a decade of hard work in this, it's still a very good Modest Mouse album, all things considered. At the same time though, because this did take such a long time to make, I feel like it makes for a certain lack of cohesion across the board. Like they made a ton of songs over this course of time, and just kind of plucked ones from each phase they went through, for better or worse. In terms of the better, Lampshades on Fire was an awesome choice for the lead single, especially since it's apparently been a live favorite since like 2011 or something. Definitely the catchiest song on the album, and a prime example of Modest Mouse's poppier side at its absolute best. Plus, I kind of love the contrast of this fun, bouncy vibe being paired with these kind of depressing lyrics about people carelessly wasting their resources with the flimsy excuse that, well, scientists will take care of it. Oh, obviously there is a sort of environmentalist theme here, but luckily Isaac doesn't really beat you over the head with it. In fact, there is a generally hippie-ish theme to a few tracks here. Another personal favorite of mine, Coyotes, is sort of a lament about animals that are unfairly hunted. Musically, it sort of embodies that more slowed-down emotional side of the band in a great way. I just love the way all the instruments build over the course of the song. I like the guitar part that sort of mimics the vocals in the beginning, kind of has a campfire feel to it I'm really digging. And while the lyrics can get a little repetitive with the whole man as the enemy of animals imagery, it doesn't really take anything away from the song as a whole to me. I'll admit though, there are a couple moments where it can go a little in the wrong direction, notably on two songs that I otherwise think are standout highlights of the album. To me, The Tortoise and the Tourist doesn't really say anything the Coyotes didn't do better and more concisely. And while The Best Room is one of those nice poppier moments with especially great guitar work, I feel like this is where the album gets a little preachier with the whole humans with first world problems theme. I mean, I could be interpreting it the wrong way, and feel free to let me know if you see it differently, but that's just what I'm getting from it. Going back to positives though, The Ground Walks with Time in a Box, like Lampshades, is just a blast of a song. 6 minutes of unabashed, funky, dancey indie rock fun. Sort of like this album's Tiny Cities Made of Ashes, or We've Got Everything. I love the backing vocals that pop up at certain points, and Isaac's more characteristically upbeat and kind of unstable delivery is especially refreshing at this point in the album, since I feel like the album as a whole can get a little too stable and safe at some points. And I know I'm probably going to get kills in the comments for this, but I honestly think that if the right EDM or house music producer got their hands on this, even as someone that's not a really big fan of those genres, it could make for a really good remix. Meanwhile, Be Brave has this sort of Pixies-esque quiet loud dynamic I'm really enjoying, along with definitely some of the more earnest and less snarky Modest Mouse lyrics you'll come across. Now, like Coyotes, it can get a little repetitive, but again, I personally don't mind. And the song Sugar Boats has this almost crazed circusy feel to it, especially in the intro. and it almost seems like the drums are like produced to sound like cogs in some old-timey machine, which only adds to the ridiculousness, really. Throw in those sudden blasts of distorted guitar between the verses, and you got a bona fide mess of a song in the best way possible. However, there are some moments where the more experimental side of Modest Mouse doesn't really work out quite as well for them. Case in point, Pistol. Now, as much as I want to be the contrarian and say, hey guys, this song isn't nearly as bad as the fan base is making it out to be, Pistol is just a misfire of a song. The cringeworthy pitch-down vocals, the terrible drum machine, the stupid lyrics, and just plain the ugly way it's all mixed is the kind of thing you just throw together when you're goofing around in the studio, most likely intoxicated, and promptly delete the files of the next morning. Not a legit album cut you expect people to actually, like. In my opinion, Modest Mouse albums in general can be cut by a few tracks, since they seem to have this weird obsession with 15-track albums, which is a bit too much. And in this case, a song like this should have just been like a B-side or a bonus track at the very most. I'll give it that the ooh refrain could have been cool on a better song, but here it's just kind of wasted. And as much as I do want to like the song Ansel, since it is a fairly heartfelt retelling of the death of Isaac's brother, I gotta be honest, the steel drums kill it for me. I mean, I could see the song kind of working if it had more of a down-tempo folkish feel, but for some bizarre reason they just made it sound like the Lido deck on a cruise ship. The last song I want to talk about, Wiki Campaign, is another one I'm kind of conflicted on. I know this is probably going to be one of the least favorites in the fan base, since it is essentially an 80s pop song, which is kind of a left turn for them, safe to say. Here's the thing though, I think this is a well-written song. It's a good song at its core. The problem is that Modest Mouse is not the band that should be playing it. No matter how much he tries to tone it down here, Isaac's voice is simply too eccentric for this kind of smooth, slick synth-pop song. I can see it being more appreciated if, say, Bleachers or Walk the Moon did a cover of it, but in this form, it just feels kinda awkward to me. Still, at the end of the day, it is an enjoyable song, as well as the majority of the songs on this thing. Like I said, there is a certain lack of focus, which is why I was focusing on, in this review, on more specific good and bad songs as opposed to the album as a whole. But overall, Strangers to Ourselves is a welcome comeback for Modest Mouse, and I'm going to give it a 7.5. I give out an if you're looking for a recommendation right about now, but really if you're into Modest Mouse, you're gonna like this album to an extent, no doubt about that. If you're looking for a good entry point, this isn't a bad one, but I would recommend The Moon in Antarctica or Good News for people who love bad news to get a better idea, but this still isn't a bad one, and it's definitely worth a listen either way. Now I just pray something comes out of those big boy sessions I heard about. So if you guys have heard this album, what do you think about it? Do you agree with what I had to say? Disagree? Have any feedback about the channel in general? Let me know in the comments down below. Share this around with anyone who might be interested. Like the Facebook page in the description for updates. Keep an eye out on this channel since there are a ton of albums that came out this week that I'm going to be getting to. And hopefully I'll see you in the next episode of Spinner Reviews.